Hi, my name is Alex Wilkinson, and today I will be doing a critical reflection on an ethical dilemma. So the scenario I chose was scenario 2, which is Marcus's split second decision. And to give you a brief summary, Alex, a student with autism, is prone to running when overwhelmed. On a library excursion, a truck backfires near the class, startling Alex and causing him to bolt towards the road. Marcus grabs his arm firmly and pulls him towards safety. However, Alex cries and resists due to the physical contact, and there were parent helpers witness to the incident. So for analysis and concerns, the priorities of concern arise from the following key areas in cascading order. In this context, the primary obligation is to the immediate safety of Alex and his peers from oncoming traffic, and that is a non-negotiable primary concern given the degree of risk. This is followed by preserving and respecting Alex's emotional well-being and autonomy in the immediate actions following the incident, avoiding unnecessary physical restraint. The secondary priorities are the procedural and communicative steps to maintain transparent communication with relevant stakeholders and to align restorative practice with policy and theory. For me, the core issue of potential negligence in a scenario is foreseeability, and that is whether or not the incident could have been reasonably forecasted or predicted. And with the provided information in this scenario, Alex suddenly running when he becomes overstimulated was a previously understood behaviour. Therefore, given the inherent risk of the environment, it leaves me wondering whether or not the appropriate preventative measures were taken to avoid foreseeable danger and ensuring the proportionate standard of care. And that could have been providing individualized support for Alex with one teacher, one student, noise cancelling headphones to limit incoming sensory inputs, and also physical positioning to stand roadside to Alex to avoid him running towards the road. So the conflicting values of interest and concern are navigated by situated ethics to understand the views of the person and the public. So the values of safety and professionalism come from Marcus's perspective, and the values of autonomy and trust come from Alex and his family. So these concerns form an ethical dilemma because no single course of action upholds all values and considerations at once. In this context, some considerations hold more weight than others. For example, restraint is permitted where it is immediately required and reasonably necessary to protect the safety of the student. However, by intervening with firm physical contact, Marcus compromises Alex's emotional well-being and challenges the professional value of respect. Additionally, this dilemma is exacerbated by the presence of parental witnesses, who may interpret Marcus's actions differently, creating tension by questioning his professional accountability. Now, these are the actions I would take in this situation and my response to the situation. I'll just briefly go over it, not to waste time. So I de-escalate the situation by immediately discontinuing the physical contact. I would try to manage the physical environment using calming techniques and noise-cancelling headphones, and just try to calm Alex down. But I'd then use transparent communication with all stakeholders, and that would be reassuring Alex with clear, simple language, and also calling the parents to inform them and also involve them in the decision-making process. I would adjust by taking the reasonable steps to prevent foreseeable harm, which is what we previously spoke about. Upon arriving at the school, you would then document and report the incident with an incident report. And then that's when you would move on to systemic action in collaboration with the parents. And that is updating Alex's individual education plan and his behavioral support plan in collaboration with the parents. And that just helps foster trust in the future. And then professional reflection using critically reflexive teaching using the four lenses model. So how would context affect your response? I think this really relates to the standard of care, and that is the level of care that is required to be exercised in a situation. And this is affected by factors including the level of inherent risk in the particular activity, the circumstances within which the accident occurred, and the past history of the student behaviour. And that kind of relates to the place, educational setting, and stakeholder categories. So for place, the busy streets and impending danger of this environment justified Marcus's response to the situation. Had this happened in a low-risk setting, the decision-making emphasis may have shifted towards calmly managing Alex's distress. For the educational setting, on an excursion, all staff have a heightened responsibility of shared supervision to accommodate the increase of foreseeable risk. And given the excursion taking place outside of a controlled school environment, this really required individualized one-on-one support with Alex. And for stakeholders, drawing on ethical decision-making frameworks, such as ethics of care, Marcus's primary obligation is to the immediate and ongoing safety of the students, ensuring Alex's best interests. Therefore, I would first de-escalate the situation and ensure Alex's emotional and physical safety before then advancing to the following steps, which is communicating clearly with the family and the school. Now, for weighting of considerations, to answer the question, yes, there is weighting of considerations. And in this context, the restraint and seclusion policy is really pertinent because Marcus using the proportionate restraint to protect Alex from the immediate from an immediate risk of physical harm outweighs other considerations in this moment. And those other considerations may be that Alex does not respond well to physical contact and Marcus grabbing Alex firmly by the arm. However, ensuring the safety of the child with proportionate restraint supersedes the other considerations, just as long as the physical contact is discontinued once the risk of harm is dissipated, and also the encounter remains respectful to Alex's dignity during and throughout the encounter and after. And this scenario is specifically outlined in the restraint and seclusion policy. So who is advantaged and disadvantaged? Advantaged is Alex because his immediate physical safety is ensured by redirecting his actions towards an optimal outcome, and he is provided with regulatory support measures such as noise-cancelling headphones and time and space to prevent overstimulation and limit external sensory inputs where possible. So short term, he's affected negatively, but in the long term, he's affected positively by my response. Other students and parents are advantaged as well because the immediate actions were taken to prevent unwarranted emotional distress for the stakeholders present. And these actions must be accompanied by a calm, reflexive discussion to process the dangerous events that transpired, addressing concerns and setting firm boundaries. Now, disadvantaged is Marcus in the short term because transparent and honest communication with Alex's family and the school principal requires a critically reflexive review of the preventative measures taken or not taken to avoid foreseeable danger. And in doing so, Marcus's professional conduct will be judged by stakeholders. However, this process will stand to better Marcus as an education professional and reduce the likelihood of harm eventuating in future activities. So in the long run, he would be advantaged. Now, the professional codes, these are the codes that are relevant to my response. However, if we look at one specifically, meeting professional ethics and responsibilities 7.1 is really pertinent to my response because it is really navigated by relevant policies and theory to approach an idealistic outcome with Alex and his family after the incident. Now, relevant policies, as previously discussed, is restraint and seclusion, because in this context, Marcus applied the proportionate degree of restraint to prevent a life-threatening risk. And this policy supports my response because the physical contact is immediately discontinued once the risk of harm is dissipated. And then also a duty of care, because as an element of the tort of negligence, to avoid negligence and foreseeability, a duty of care requires you to provide an adequate system of student supervision, so that's the one-on-one support, and implement strategies to prevent foreseeable injuries, and that's the meeting with the parents. And also monitoring students where there are no risks. So after the incident, taking them to a calm space and using preventative measures. And also the disability standards is also pertinent because making reasonable adjustments which allow students with a disability to participate and learn at the same basis as students without a disability. So with the systematic action with the parents, in collaboration with the parents, we make adjustments so that they build trust in future activities so that this sort of thing can't happen in the future. And so the relevant theories, the first is situated ethics, which is represented with the 5Ps model. And so for policy and procedure, our response aligns with the Victorian government's duty of care and restraint and seclusion policies to inform my immediate decision-making, prioritising Alex's safety and well-being. For the public, I would engage in transparent and child-focused discussions with Alex's parents and relevant stakeholders to optimise educational outcomes and promote a safe and inclusive environment. For profession, my response is oriented by the set of AITSL professional standards for teachers, which emphasises maintaining student safety and meeting ethical responsibilities. And for person, my personal moral compass orients my decision decisions with a foundation of procedural guidance. And lastly, for critically reflexive teaching, this theory supports my response as I would actively engage in reflexive conversations with relevant stakeholders during and after the incident. So for student I's, I would listen to Alex and maintain a calm presence, restricting my comments to supportive statements, because reasoning in this, for students with autism when they meltdown, reasoning doesn't really help. For personal experience, I recount my personal actions through incident reports and private meetings. For research and theory, my response to the incident is aligned with relevant literature and policies to inform practice. And from a colleague's perspective, I discussed the incident with the school principal to receive feedback and collaboratively approach proceeding steps. And this is the reference list. Thank you.